Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome to my lecture. So today we are going to talk about the utility, choice and equilibrium. So in economics, the most important or perhaps the most puzzling point of discussion is like how to allocate resources efficiently, how to make the choices. So when we talk about the choices, before choices, we have to begin with utility. As a consumer, when we consume any goods or services, it is very important to understand rationally that how much utility or how much satisfaction that we are deriving from consuming one commodity. And therefore, we'll talk in details about utility choice in context of public policy. So if you look at policy in our day-to-day activities, even if you can imagine, like when we get up early in the morning and then till we go to the bed, the kind of activities that we do, the kind of commodities that we choose, it is also to it is important to reflect that or we are guided our day-to-day economic activities based on the how policy is framed. And therefore even for commodity, what commodity to choose, say during breakfast, what food that are available for lunch, or what transportation that I'm going to use to commute from my one place to another. So these all depending on how policies are framed or what kind of alternatives that I have in front of me. And when we choose any commodity and therefore there what level of satisfaction that we get, and that's how utility comes in a place. So let's begin with the concept of utilities, how we understand utility. So before getting into utility, let's talk about what is the choice. So in the theory of choice, it is all about the interactions of preferences and then constraints that we have. So in case of resources, as we already discussed, the resources are constrained, and therefore and our wants are unlimited. When we make choices within our limited resources, there optimization comes or efficient allocation of resources is come. And when we do this in the whole process, preferences of orders is very important, or orders of the preferences are very important. In case of utility, what we understand in one sentence, utility means the satisfactions that one derived from a commodity. So if we try to understand utility from how to measure utility or how to understand utility much better. So in economic analysis, it is very important to understand all the factors, whether in the partial equilibrium model or in the general equilibrium model. So to keep utility intact and also to understand utility from two-dimensional model, say we have two commodities, like say commodity X and Y, and then other important factors like taste, preferences, demographical compositions, geographical locations. So those factors, if we keep constant, then it will be it will give us the relation between X and Y. Means what would be the change in say in X due to 1 unit change in Y. In other words, what would be the consumer behavior for consuming Y in order to change in 1 unit in X. So if I want to understand this the relationship between only two commodities, we are keeping other things constant. So in terms of equation, like if utility as a function, if we can write like u is a function of x and y, and keeping all other factors constant or remain unchanged. So this is how we can actually think or begin with the utility function. So now utility can be understood from various aspects. So there are two broad theories that that we take into account to understand utility. The first one is cardinal approach, which says that utility is measurable and also additive. In the ordinal utility theory, it says that utility is impossible to measure, so it can't be measured. It can be compared, and then preferences are ordered. So just to give a example, like we have two sort of visual pictures that we have. On the left hand side, say we have two commodities like burger and pizza, and the satisfaction according to cardinal utility theoretical perspective. So utility that I derive from burger is given say 7 point out of 10, and in case of pizza 9 points is given on 10. Left hand side, this photograph clearly states that I have better utility if I consume pizza, but then because of the points that I have given, 9 and 7. On the other hand, this is where on which cardinalist approach on the utility is criticized, that utility cannot be measured. For instance, for lunch, if I choose between pizza and burger, it is very, I'm certain that either I will take pizza or burger, but it is absolutely impossible to calculate how much utility that I derive if I consume pizza, or how much utility that I derive if I consume burger. So on the cardinalist approach, it is very certain that a point will be given, and utility can be measured. On the other hand, on the right hand side, of course my preferences is pizza over burger, whether we put the value or not. So my preferences can be ordered, like can be ranked, and therefore I choose pizza over burger. So this approach is much more important and kind of realistic to understand the utility or to measure utility. So now when we are talking about preferences, so let us talk about certain assumptions about preferences. So there are three broad assumptions on preferences. The first one is completeness. So what does that mean? So like my basket, or the choice of the basket, if that basket has pizza and burger for lunch, not any other commodity, so I'm very certain that I have to choose between pizzas or burger. So this completeness is very important for any rational human being to decide which one to choose. So now the second point is transitivity of preferences, which states that if A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then definitely A will be preferred to C. If I write like I am deriving more utility from A over B, and between B and C I get more utility from consuming B than C, following this, say condition A and condition B, then certainly A will be giving more utility or satisfactions over C. So this is called transitivity of the preferences. The third point, more is better. So if I know that only one commodity, like say in this case like pizza, I'm having it, and for lunch, so more pizza is always better than the less pizza until my satisfaction is saturated. So more is better. So now the next point is, how do we understand utility? So now there are different ways in which to measure or understand utility, and one of the tools that we consider to derive or discuss utility is through indifference curve. So what does indifference curve means? Like what is indifference curve? By definition, is a curve um, or the functional relationship that shows all the combinations of goods and services that provide the same level of utility, right? So that is very important to understand. Like for instance, if I consider two commodity, like say y on the vertical axis and x is on the horizontal axis, so any combination that we get, like say here, say any finite numbers here, and then if we draw this, like any combination on this curve will give us the same level of say satisfactions. For instance, if this is our utility curve, so any point on this utility or on this indifference curve will give, you know, same level or constant level of utility. Like whether I am here on A or I am here on B or I am here on point C, so kind of I am indifferent to choose between A, B, C. In some case, like in case of A, I'm having more y1, like y, and relatively less amount of x. If I move from A to B, then I'm having like, you know, less y, but I'm at the same time I'm getting x2. So likewise in case of C, I'm getting more of x3 and further less of y. But if I consider from a rational human being, is like on the utilities perspective, I'm getting equal level of, you know, satisfactions whether I'm on A or B or C. Uh, take this, look at this picture. It's like equally happy whether, you know, you get one Coke with two slices of pizza or two Cokes with one slice of pizza. So here the satisfaction is the same. So if this is the case, so indifference curve, like I'm indifferent to sort of to choose between A, B or C. So in this context, when it is moving from A to B, why it is moving from A to B? It is basically I'm substituting one with other, like marginal substitution, rate of substitution, which says that individual is willing to reduce consumption of one good. In this particular case, I'm willing to consume less of y when one get more of another unit. So I'm indifferent from A to B because I'm consuming less of y, but I'm certainly consuming or getting more unit of x. So this negative slope of the indifference curve is coming from this, you know, marginal rate of substitution. Here, like, you know, with from A to B and B to C, that marginal utility is actually, you know, diminishing as my total utility is increasing. So we'll come back on this point in details. So now, what is total utility? So even to calculate marginal rate of substitutions, what is total utility? Total utility is like total satisfactions that a person derives from the consumption of goods and services. Here x, so what is my total level of satisfactions from x or y if I consider, and marginal utility is like, you know, change in the total utility due to one unit change in x. Then we'll get the marginal utility for x. And in case of y, what would be the change in the total utility due to one additional unit of changes in y, and then we'll get the marginal utility of y. And again I'm highlighting like law of diminishing marginal utility is basically when with an increase in the consumption, marginal utility, you know, decreases. The same example, like, you know, the first kind of satisfactions that I derive from first bite of pizza, that will not give the same level of satisfactions from the second bite of, say, pizzas. Same with the water. The first glass of water, that the kind of, satisfaction that you will get. As you consume more and more units, your marginal utility of that particular commodity will start declining. So now when we are talking about indifference curve, so slope of indifference curve or marginal rate of substitution, how we calculate is like, let's take a look at graphically as well as through mathematical expression, right? So u say is a function of two commodity x and y, and let us assume that the constant term say k, which means if this is my utility curve and y is measured along with the vertical axis and x is measured along with the horizontal axis, and if this is my utility function x and for x and y, so any point on the utility, again I'm reiterating that my utility level, total utility level will be same. If it is 0.10, then all the points on the utility, every point will give the same equal level of satisfaction, like say 10 or 8 or say k, and here k is a constant. So now if we want to see the changes, so changes of utility, like if I do this, like total derivative, and I'm sure you know about this one, and since total utility is constant k, so the first order derivative will be 0. So 0 equals to, this is nothing like changes in the total utility due to 1 unit change in x. So that means this is nothing, it is marginal utility of x and dx plus marginal utility of y and dy. One can write dy by dx minus here then marginal utility of x by marginal utility of y. So this is nothing, this is called marginal rate of substitution between x and y. Likewise, similar way we can also try to get it for marginal rate of substitution between y and x. So here is basically what we mean here is like say point A. So we are trying to understand the slope, and here it is like delta y and this is like delta x. So this is how the measure, like marginal rate of substitution. So this change, like say this change is like change in y, and this particular change is basically change in x. So this is what the mathematical expression of marginal rate of substitutions, and this is graphical representation on the right hand side. It is a graphical representation of marginal rate of substitution considering the utility function. So now what is indifference curve maps? Let us like say again we are assuming two commodity, and like for utility with x and y, and here this is like say utility, and then another level of say utility curve that we get with a different level of or higher level of x and y, and then this is like u3, and here we can also get it another level like say u4. So as we move up we get the higher level of utility, that means higher level of satisfactions level. If we move down it is like lower level of utility. So indifference maps will certainly guide the how this y and x are related. So now there are some specific preferences, and then we can actually draw, like say certain different kind of commodities, and where utility or set of like utility or indifference maps will be different. Like for instance, the first example is like useless good. In case of useless good, how indifference curve should look like again y, and here, and if I draw this, so y, suppose y is neutral goods, like if I get the subsidy on say LPG, uh, and then government is providing LPG cylinder to reduce other cooking kind of fuels. So for me, x, if x is like say LPG, then for me kerosene or others will be sort of neutral. So I'll get, certainly I'll get x1, x2 and x3, like higher amount of x1, higher amount of x, and then I'll get higher level of utility out of it, which is indifferent to y. So this is one, if y is neutral. In case of x is neutral, with the same logic, like here y and here x, then we'll get high level of y1, y2, y3, but then here x is neutral. So I'm getting only deriving more set of utility from y, not from x. So now what is the economic bad? So economic bad, say here y, and if I consider you know x on the horizontal axis, so like say utility curve is upward sloping, which, like if y, like let me take the example of say x on the horizontal axis, let's say is a travel time, and here or the distance, and y is the traffic. So traffic is the, like city level management, like that is the infrastructure, like again kind of policy, how efficient policies that you can make, like traffic in Kolkata, traffic in Bangalore will be different than traffic in say in Chandigarh, or say in Gandhinagar. In the planned cities, traffic congestion will be much more, I mean that is what it was believed, like in planned cities traffic will be much more smooth or less congested as compared to old and metro cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, or Calcutta. So obviously due to traffic congestion, my travel time or the distance covered will be less, and more time will be used, and this is certainly is a like economic bad. In case of perfect substitution, like say again you take two goods, like here y and here x axis. So if we consider, like say petrol, take the example of petrol, and then say Indian oil, and here say Bharat Petroleum. So it is like perfectly is a substitute to each other. So for me petrol is important, whether of course I have the preference, like for instance I have the preference on Indian oil over Bharat Petroleum, but then in a situation where I don't have Indian oil, then certainly I can choose Bharat Petroleum over Indian oil. So I'm not that rigid. So it is perfectly substituted, right? So in the complementary, in the perfect complementary, if we again like x-axis and then y-axis should be straight line here. So like say again take the example of say metro, access to metro. Take the example in Delhi, and here say say local auto. So if in the city metro connections are very well, but then from my home, from my home to metro station there is no local convenience, then how will I access to metro station? So if government wants to increase the metro operations, then government also has to provide some local sort of either rickshaw or auto should be easily available, so that I can affordable, so that I can get the auto to go to metro station. And that's how uh, between metro and auto, so these are like sort of perfectly complement to each other. Similarly, commodities like say printer and ink, if without ink printer can't be functional, also not be functional. Therefore commodities like metro and local auto, so this will be like perfectly competitive, perfectly complementary goods to each other. So I'll stop here, and then for this Holler variant, that intermediate microeconomics, and also initial selected chapters from Jonathan Gruber's that public finance and public policy, that will be useful for you to understand utility, choice, and preferences and equilibrium with regard to public policy. So thank you very much for your attentions, and I'll see you in my next lecture.